Hi everyone. As you all know, dissatisfaction with Boris Johnson is great. The new education minister and supporter of the British Prime Minister reacted with an obscene gesture now. The newly appointed British Education Minister Andrea Jenkins has shown demonstrators her middle finger and thus caused horror. He who laughs last laughs best. She called out to the crowd on Saturday. And Jenkins is considered a supporter of Boris Johnson, as I said. What I was wondering is why the middle finger and not the two fingers? The politician says she made the obscene gesture as she entered Downing Street on Thursday. While there, she followed Johnson's announcement, of his kind of retirement, showing her support for the Prime Minister. Dozens of people stood outside the gate, many chanting for the Tory politician to resign immediately. A few days ago, Johnson resigned as party leader and thus also as Prime Minister in the end because of possible scandals. However, he intends to remain in office until a successor is found. The images caused an outrage on Twitter. For example, one user wrote, "If there's one picture that sums up everything that's wrong with this government, this is it." Just saying. Jenkins was appointed UK's new education secretary just days after several ministers in Johnson's cabinet resigned. She was also criticised for her action in her own party. The behaviour was outrageous, that's what Tory MP George Freeman tweeted on Saturday. This is exactly why we need a new Prime Minister. The code of conduct for ministers must be restored. Service in public offices must be respected. And Cabinet member Mark Spencer said the obscene gesture was unacceptable. No one expects secretaries of state to be perfect, tweeted opposition party politician Bridget Phillipson. But is it too much to expect them not to treat the public that way? The handling of criticism of him and his government and his lack of respect for ethics and morals also led to Prime Minister Johnson's downfall. Jenkins justified herself. Like other politicians, she was badly insulted by a barking mob. In the past few years, she has received verbal abuse and fought death threats. "I was at the end of my strength," she said. Jenkins emphasized that nobody should put up with such treatment. "I should have shown more composure, but I'm only human." Death threats against politicians or people in public are never an acceptable means of expression. I want to make that one clear. Not even if a government that works with lies and deception is still in office. And I know this, I get a lot of threats like this, a lot of insults here in the comments, but I chose to be in the public and chose to be a politician as well. But let's get back to Boris, because some compare him to Trump, others are nervous about his future. In the end, the pressure became too much for him, and the Conservative politician announced his resignation, as I said, as party leader on Thursday. But he makes it clear that he's not going voluntarily. And as Prime Minister, he's not yet saying goodbye to Downing Street. And today, I would therefore also like to tell you how the Minister of Education is reacting in the current situation, which I did in the beginning of the video, but also how the press at home in the UK for you and abroad, here in Germany, for example, says it. The Telegraph in the UK said, whatever the party wants to do next, it must do it quickly. The country will neither understand nor forgive a protracted leadership dispute amid an economic crisis and the threat of a major war in Europe. Johnson said these were the reasons he was reluctant to resign and that he thought it was eccentric that he was being forced to do so by MPs who owed him their seats. He's right when he says there are pressing problems that the government needs to address, so his successor needs to be in place in days, not weeks, let alone months. And The Guardian in the UK wrote, "He is still Prime Minister today. It is extraordinary that he reshuffled his cabinet on Thursday morning, just as he was finally preparing his own resignation. He intends to stay for a few more weeks, possibly until the Tory party conference in October. Under previous prime ministers, such transitions were relatively uncontroversial. That is not the case with Johnson, and for one simple reason. The others could be trusted, but he could not. Party with a confidence vote in the House of Commons should he try to stay in the office. The Conservative Party must act swiftly and relentlessly to oust Johnson for good. And the Daily Mail wrote, in Boris Johnson's tenure, the sun is finally setting. Always a political outsider, he finally succumbed to his enemies in the Westminster machine. And how they crowd. The room was full of malicious incompetents who denounced Mr. Johnson and stressed their own impeccable virtue. But after watching his farewell speech to Downing Street yesterday, Tory MPs who have shamefully conspired to overthrow the most charismatic and eligible Conservative leader since Margaret Thatcher are wondering maybe already, what have we done? They must have taken drugs, by the way, I'm sorry. And the BBC said, a senior EU official tongue-in-cheek summed up the mix of fascination and glee at Boris Johnson's demise and fear of what may come next. I've got one hand in my popcorn bag and the others on my nervous heart. Und Die Zeit in Germany wrote, for a moment it looked as if Boris Johnson would turn into a copy of Donald Trump after all. That was yesterday, when his ministers not only resigned in rows, but also their boss tried to convince them in direct talks that his cause was lost and that he had to go. The British Prime Minister, balked, decoupled from reality, only interested in his own political survival, heedless in dealing with the constitution, that indeed evoked memories of the former US president in his late rampaging phase. But the Trumpist escalation did not take place after all. And the Frankfurter Rundschau, also from Germany, wrote, the overdue resignation of the British Prime Minister is neither a liberation for Boris Johnson nor for the Tories. Despite his numerous transgressions, Bojo is unreasonable to the end and prefers to blame others, pointing to a herd instinct for his hopeless situation. The Conservatives allowed the right-wing populist Johnson to cheat and lie for far too long. They only turned against him after the British turned their backs on the former saviour and he no longer won elections. Now the Tories are continuing the undignified drama with a power struggle over Johnson's successor. And El Mundo from Spain wrote, since he no longer has any moral authority and his popularity is at an all-time low, Johnson's immediate resignation would be both for his party, which has to reinvent itself, and for the necessary stability of the UK, the most desirable thing. In addition to the institutional crisis, Britain is also currently facing a worrying economic situation which will require urgent action. Nobody sheds a tear for the fallen Prime Minister, not in the UK, which is itself desperate to rid the country of a leader who has shamed the country like no other person before him, and not even in the European Union, which is now hoping Johnson's successor will ease negotiations on the many open fronts surrounding Brexit. And Le Figaro from France wrote, alone, abandoned by his ministers and his party, the Conservative leader pays for the series of crises and scandals that diverted attention from his first successes. 2/3 of Brits accuse the Prime Minister of lacking integrity, competence and seriousness. This is because the UK has a foolish adherence to one principle. Legislators must obey the law coming from them. The slyness has become a farce. The Brits are tired of the spectacle and Johnson and all his promises. But he won't go, not before he has attended the fight for his successor until the autumn. How long will that civil war in the party go on? Because that would be Bojo's greatest magic trick. And I say his greatest magic trick would be to run for leader of the Tory party and win. That, in that case, I probably go to therapy because I must be crazy, because I wouldn't believe to see that. But there is speculation about this somewhere in the press at the moment. I read something about this morning. We all know Trump wants to run again for the elections for president, which he legally can. And I don't know, I guess Boris Johnson could throw his hat in the ring. I don't know. I didn't check that one yet because I just read it today about the speculations. But no, you might think about doing that when the next one failed, Boris is coming back as the big savior or whatever, like Trump is thinking at the moment. But to be honest, who wants to see that man again in that office? Please. In this case, just people from the UK, please tell me if you want that. I really would like to know people who would want that. And I'll see you in my next video. Ärgert euch nicht.